The dream for most of us is, I want a cash ATM, a business that's making money for me on automatic. I want to be able to do what I want when I want within the business, but within my life. And yet the day we start the business, then it's like, okay, it's all about hustle and grind. And how hard do I have to work and working more? And, there's a lot of people talking about the importance of hustle and grind, and it kind of repulses me. I understand the sentiment behind it. When starting a business, we have to be available for it, but we need to make this transition out.
Hello and welcome to the Wholesale Made Easy podcast, where we believe selling on Amazon shouldn't be hard, and we're going to prove it. My name is Dylan Carter, and I'm one of the co-founders at Vendrive, a tool that helps Amazon wholesale sellers streamline their businesses, stay organized, and land more profitable accounts. I'm sitting down with other successful wholesale sellers, and together we're sharing lessons learned and what it really takes to succeed with wholesale. Today's guest is Mike Michalowicz, the amazing author of books such as Profit First, The Pumpkin Plan, and his most recent book, Clockwork. In today's episode, we dive deep into Clockwork, breaking down how most entrepreneurs get something so important wrong, the biggest bottleneck to overcome in growing your business, and how to find your queen bee role. Let's get to the episode. All right, Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Dylan. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember being on a very long road trip. My dad decided we needed to drive from Florida to Michigan, one fell swoop, to pick up a racing motor.
Swoop.
And he calls me at probably 10 a.m. I'm eating breakfast, and he's like, "Hey, pack a bag. We got to go pick up a racing motor." I'm like, "Okay, well, I need my Kindle because this is going to be insane." And I remember I had already read Profit First, and I picked up The Pumpkin Plan and just devoured it. I was like, "Oh my God." Because as a young entrepreneur, I realized a lot of the false assumptions I was making, and a lot of, in my opinion, the idiotic mistakes I was making just because I didn't know, right? And so the Pumpkin Plan really helps, and I send it to everybody I can. It's like, listen, this helps clarify so much. And it's a great analogy, by the way. I never would have picked pumpkin farming as the analogy, off the top of my head. So that was brilliant, by the way.
Thank you.
But dude, I just want to say, thanks for writing some amazing, amazing books. I mean, it's fantastic. Seriously.
That means the world to me to hear you say that, Dylan. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, man. So let's talk about your new book, because you're on a rampage of writing books. I love it. Clockwork. This is something that anybody listening to the podcast knows I geek out with. I love. This is really, in my opinion, shifting the perspective of what your business is.
Right.
Can you give me a overview? Why did you write this book? Why does it exist?
Yeah. So what I found is one of the most overstepped, or I shouldn't say overstepped, but one of the most important elements of a business that we're looking to achieve that gets ignored most frequently is the autonomy of the business. The day we start a business, the dream for most of us is, I want a cash ATM, a business that's making money for me on automatic. I want to be able to do what I want when I want within the business, but within my life. And yet the day we start the business, then it's like, okay, it's all about hustle and grind. And how hard do I have to work and working more? And, there's a lot of people talking about the importance of hustle and grind, and it kind of repulses me. I understand the sentiment behind it. When starting a business, we have to be available for it, but we need to make this transition out. Sadly, most people get stuck in the hustle and grind for their life, and the only scalability of the business is based upon how hard they're willing to work. I wrote Clockwork to kind of retaliate against this, that our aspiration should not to be working as a doer for our business, but to be designing specific outcomes, have a vision, and choreograph all the resources to get there. So Clockwork is about organizational efficiency and getting the business run on automatic.
I love it. It's funny. I keep telling people, and something I realized a year ago, the majority of entrepreneurs quit a $70,000 a year salary, working 40 hours a week, to go make minimum wage, working 80 hours a week.
Right.
We're a bit masochistic. I don't understand why. But to your point, I think in the early days, it does make sense, right? Because you're starting something from nothing, and that is hard work, depending on how quick you want to do it, right? A lot of us are very impatient. But you get to this point, and I find in my own experience, I get to this point a lot earlier than I anticipate. And then I'm left with a hard decision. And it's even an emotionally hard decision, because I feel lazy if I'm not putting in X number of hours, which sounds counterintuitive.
All this emotional baggage. I think what a lot of us believe is that switching from working inside the business to working on the business, which is a great concept that was proposed in Michael Gerber's book called The E-Myth, that it's a switch, that one day, all of a sudden, now I'm running the business. And what I propose in Clockwork is it's not a switch, it's a throttle, that we slowly have to extract ourselves from our business. There's a classic saying of this parent-child relationship. I started a business, I'm the parent, my business is its child, I will nurture it, I will serve it, I will protect it and feed it. And over time, it'll grow its own strength and it'll come back and care for me. That's total bullshit. It is not a parent-child relationship. It's that of conjoined twins. We are birthed along with our business, and we are sharing critical organs, vital everything. And therefore, the extraction is a very surgical process. You very carefully separate over time ourselves from the business and give the business autonomy. We'll always share the same soul, but we have to give the business autonomy. So the challenge I hope people overcome when they read Clockwork is going through a surgical process of slowly but consistently removing themselves. And I believe for most businesses, the ones I've studied, and I studied countless ones for it, it's probably about 18 months for most businesses. So it's not like overnight. It's about a year and a half that you can go into this full extraction from the business and have it running independently of you. And that's regardless of the size of the business, from a relatively new startup that may has 1 or 2 employees to a large corporation.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. It's funny because a lot of people that I talk to are very much of the opinion the business is me and I am the business.
Yeah.
But you really have to understand, like, it's its own identity to a certain degree. And you kind of have to, and I love that analogy of the parent-child. That was kind of interesting. I haven't heard it positioned that way, but yeah, the conjoined twins makes a lot of sense too, because it's hard. I mean, it's hard to take a 4-week vacation. The thought of that for me right now with our company, our software company that's 9 months old in terms of the product itself. I mean, I'm like, man, we couldn't do that right now.
Right. Yeah. So 9 months old, that makes sense and it's justifiable. 9 years old, many people are still stuck saying, nope, can't take that 4-week vacation yet. So, one of the big calls to action in Clockwork is declaring a 4-week vacation. And I suggest that any business, the owner needs to declare his 4-week vacation within 18 months of today, including a business that's 9 months old. Here's the idea behind it. When we declare that we're going to remove ourselves, and this is a physical and digital disconnect from our business for 4 consecutive weeks, most businesses experience every element of the business within those monthly cycles: invoicing, enhancements to the software, employee decisions, maybe you lose or have to gain clients. And if a business can sustain for 4 weeks or even grow in the absence of the owner, it likely proves that that business can sustain into perpetuity without the owner. But there's a mind shift that happens. So I did this for myself. One benefit of being an author is when you write a book, like, you have to adhere to the principles, otherwise you're a total tool. So I'm like, okay, I wrote the Clockwork and discovered this concept of the 4-week vacation. I immediately declared it. I've subsequently gone on 2 4-week vacations already, and I have my next one scheduled at the end of this year. And what happens, and I have now a very personal experience with this, you declare it and then there's the oh shit moment. Like, I'm an author. Like, I write books and speak. I can't leave my business for 4 weeks, let alone forever. That's insane. This is not going to happen. But once I declared it, then I started thinking differently, saying, well, what would empower this to happen? How can I leave for 4 weeks? First of all, there was the delivery of systems to my colleagues. I have 14 employees, part-time and full-time, that work here now. The second thing was the realization, like, I don't have to write my own books. I could hire a ghostwriter, but that doesn't seem authentic and not who I am. But I could start a For Dummies series. I could start a series where other people write books in the entrepreneurial genre under my kind of all-encompassing For Entrepreneur series. So I started that. For Profit First, a book I wrote, I now have 6 derivative books: Profit First for chiropractors, Profit First for dentists. I don't write those books. People have licensed that out for me. So that was a realization. Speaking, I got to deliver my own keynotes, I thought. And then I said, oh, what if I train people to do my keynotes? Now, certain times, major events will say, we want Mike to speak. But other events say, we just want to hear about Profit First, and we don't know if we're in the position to hire Mike or afford him. I say, well, now I have 30 people that have been trained by me to speak on Profit First from their own perspectives. Last week alone, I think we had 15 Profit First presentations delivered. I did one, main stage keynote. The other 14 were delivered by other people. Declaring this 4-week vacation forces a mind shift to start asking better questions. And I believe any business can do it, including creatives like an author. Any business, the owner can extract themselves. And the last point I want to make is that when you do this shift, I think we should own a new term. I love the term entrepreneurship, but sadly, I think people are associating that with hustle and grind. I suggest to people now, don't call yourself an entrepreneur or business owner. Call yourself a shareholder. Next time you're at like a party or something, someone's like, what do you do? Say, I'm a shareholder of a software development company. People will look at you like a deer in headlights and say, what the hell does that mean? And now you say, I have equity in a business. And a shareholder, if you own stock in like Ford or some public company, you don't like drive over to Ford every day and say, hey, I'm here for it to work. You collect the distributions because you invest in the company. You don't do anything except vote as a board member and give direction to the company. That's why I think we need to declare ourselves as shareholders for the business and stop doing the work inside the business and start giving votes and direction to the business, but letting other people and other things run the business.
Yeah, I'm going to break that down because that was a gold mine. So there's a few things there. So you're utilizing a forced function, which I've been obsessed with for some reason for the last few months. So
I love that. Yeah,
it's so funny you brought that up. It does, right? So it's. I mean, you can do this with anything. So a forced function is basically, I want to start going to the gym, but my willpower is just not high enough right now. I can't trust myself. I'm going to pay a personal trainer to text me. Like, they're going to expect me here Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 1 p.m. And if I'm not there, they're going to be upset. Forced function, right? Same thing with your business. So it's like, listen, I'm going to do this at this point. You're going to have that oh shit moment. But the second thing that I want to wrap is you're asking better questions. This is such a underutilized thought experiment, right? How could we do this? And you, the same thing with so Profit First Professionals, like that's such an amazing plan. And I never would have thought you could hand off giving speeches in that way.
I didn't either. And the funny thing is the shift in the question is usually from a why to a how. So I used to say, why do I always have to speak? Why am I struggling with this? Why? When we ask why, our mind goes and says, oh, here's why, because speakers have to do all their own speaking, right? In invoking this 4-week vacation, I changed from why to how. I'm like, how am I going to do speaking when I'm not around? And then my mind's like, that's a weird question. Let me think about it. And it's like, have other people do the speeches. There was a guy I interviewed for Clockwork, actually 2 people. One guy's name was Mike Aguilario, and there's another woman named Robin Robbins. And I interviewed these people. Both have really these prolific businesses. Mike Aguilario has a plumbing company, an electrical contractor. He used to be the guy driving the truck around doing it. It grew to 25 million, and all these employees. Robin Robbins, similar story in the membership space. I asked both of them, like, how do you grow a business so much? And they said, by getting an office outside the office. And that was kind of this weird mind shift. I said, what do you mean? Mike realized when he was at his plumbing shop, even though he had hired other plumbers and electricians, they would come to him with a constant stream of questions and he'd be answering them. He realized that he became this linchpin or bottleneck for the business. He was the decision maker. He decided to not have an office there anymore. So he set up shop for himself, at least down the road. Now people couldn't walk in and ask him questions. His team had to become self-empowered and figure out the answers themselves. And they started to grow stratospherically because now Mike was able to work on strategy. I met with Robin Robbins, totally different industry, exact same thing. She said, the day I moved my office out of the office, we started to grow explosively because no one could walk in and ask me questions anymore. It's that forced feedback, right? Those forced mechanisms. It's often a simple change that causes this massive behavioral shift in ourselves, and in this case, even our employees.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of not optimizing for those little things, but like, what's our biggest growth lever we can pull right now? Yeah. And it's always like the toughest, most uncomfortable things.
Right.
But you pull that lever enough times, you're like, it's really not that uncomfortable. And the positive outcome is so much higher than you anticipated that you're like, we're just going to keep doing this, because if we keep asking the right questions, we get great answers, and then we can execute on those answers that we're getting. Let's talk about Queen Bee role. What can you break that down for me? Because I already like this.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So as I'm studying business efficiency for this book, I first started off by interviewing all the businesses I could that had achieved the highest levels of efficiency, no dependency on the owners and so forth. And it was an eclectic group. There was a playset manufacturer in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania I met with. There was a pizza shop and so forth. I found they all had their own secret sauce, so to speak, but there was no common thread. And I found that often when you can't find a common thread in business, you should rely on biomimicry, which means look at nature's solution to something. And often nature has an answer because nature spent, billions of years figuring something out where mankind's maybe, a short span of 300 years of modern business. So I looked at nature and found that beehives are extraordinarily efficient in scalability. And they follow a simple rule set. It's only 2 rules. Every bee knows or is programmed to first ensure the efficiency and productivity of the queen bee role. Now, the queen bee role in a beehive is the production of eggs. Now, the reason this is such an important role is that a beehive, its thrivability, survivability depends upon production of eggs. Bees have a very short lifespan. Therefore, you constantly need to be producing new bees. Every bee knows we need to produce eggs. Now, it's called the queen bee role because it happens that the queen bee is the one who does egg production. It's not to be confused that the queen bee is the most important bee. She's serving the role, too, of laying the eggs. The other ones are caring for the eggs. The queen bee is expendable, quite frankly. They can spawn new queen bees. They just need to make eggs being produced. The rule number 2 is once egg production is functioning, every bee then goes and does its primary job functioning, collecting nectar, defending the hive, whatever it is. But none of that stuff matters if eggs aren't being produced. What I found is this translates directly to business. Every business has a singular core function that it's doing, that our business survivability and therefore thrivability is contingent upon. The sad thing is most business owners have no clue what their QBR, queen bee role is for the organization. Therefore, it's not identified. Therefore, the employees don't know it. And it only runs haphazardly. Occasionally, we produce eggs and then we're doing something else. We put equal importance on everything. What I found is the most efficient businesses and the ones who scale the most easy identify the QBR, have absolute clarity around it, have every employee aware of what it is, and never let that function be hampered. Everything else needs to be in the ballpark. You got to do the other things, but they just need to be adequate. The one thing you need to be superior at, the one activity, is the QBR. You just need to identify what it is. And there's a simple way to find it too, by the way.
Yeah, let's dive into that in a second, because it's funny. I try to create analogies for myself because it just kind of helps me remember things. But
yeah,
I remember when I started the Amazon business before we got into the software, I started to tell myself, because again, the hardest things always, actually drive revenue. And it was calling 10 suppliers per day. And I remember telling myself, okay, you haven't earned the right to do anything until this has happened first. And in retrospect, that was my queen bee role. Because if I didn't have new suppliers, I didn't have new inventory, in which case I couldn't purchase anything, in which case my capital was stale and stagnated.
Yeah.
So and everything else stems from that one task. And so clarifying that is dramatic. Let's jump into how you find these queen bee roles.
Dylan, you nailed a critical point. It's a task. It's always a task. And some people came to me initially when I was writing the book and said, the most important thing is invoicing. If we're not invoicing clients, we'll never collect money. Therefore, we always have to be invoicing. And I said, it's not invoicing because if you're not delivering service, you can invoice outside the wazoo and you're not going to get paid. You actually may get sued for inappropriately invoicing people. Inevitably, what I found is the QBR is the task that supports the business's thrivability and survivability. And there's a simple way to find it. So simple that actually I didn't include in the book. I had an original, a little more complex way of finding it, but I've refined it even further since then, and I may re-release the book with this concept. But here's what it is. Every business has a singular big promise we make to our customer. We promise many things, but there's one biggest promise. Example I love to use is FedEx. FedEx promises to deliver packages on time. Now, they also do shipping. They have print shops. They do print shops. They do packaging. But the biggest promise is delivery of packages on time. That's what FedEx is known for. We as businesses need to know what we're known for. And if we don't know what we're known for, we need to identify it. We can choose what we want to be known for. What do you want to be world famous for? Once you identify that, then we say, what is the singular activity that most delivers on that big promise? So for FedEx, the biggest thing they do that delivers packages on time is the logistics, is the movement of packages. So that means that's FedEx's QBR. It must be defended and protected. FedEx tomorrow could announce, you know what? Screw package logistics. We're not even going to do it anymore. Let's just be customer service focused. Now, their promise is delivering packages on time. And I would suspect if FedEx says, forget logistics, we're going to be all about customer service, I bet you within 1 week, they would be in jeopardy of going out of business. The headline says, FedEx, the nicest people on the planet who can't deliver a package on time. Don't know where your package is? Sorry, but we love you. FedEx would go out of business. Now, if we reverse it, if FedEx says we're going 100% on our queen bee role of logistics, every single package, we'll never miss a package. And you know what? Customer service, we're not going to answer the phones anymore. We just don't know how to do a good job at that. 1 week from today, the headlines will be something like customer service sucks at FedEx, but guess what? Every package is delivered. They won't go out of business. People may be grumbling, but if I know my package is being delivered, that's the promise. So I'm good. This is the key. Know that big thing that you're being world famous for and always be delivering on that. That's the QBR, whatever delivers on it. For our own business, we need to identify what do we want to be world famous for? What's our big promise? Then figure out what's the one activity of all the activities we do that most makes that a reality. That's your QBR. Everyone in the organization needs to know what it is. Everyone needs to make sure it's humming along. They may not be doing the work, but they got to keep an eye on it. You know, the old see something, say something. Other activities that support it, yes, they need to be in the ballpark. But just like the customer service at FedEx, if it slips up, you may get some grumbles. You're not going out of business. But if you ignore the QBR, you are going to go out of business. And the reality is for most businesses, they don't know what the QBR is. They put equal importance on everything. And then businesses say, how come it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back? We never seem to be growing explosively. There's always fires to put out. It's because they haven't identified the QBR and they're surely not protecting and serving it.
Today's episode is brought to you by GoAura.com, our AI-based repricing tool. If you're ready to take your sales to the next level, repricing is the way to go. No more manually adjusting your prices each day. Let our AI actually do the heavy lifting for you. And if you're sick of repricing tools dropping their activity and leaving you in the dark, Aura can help. With smart repricing strategies, an optimized platform, and instant repricing, Aura both reprices faster and holds the buy box for 65% more time than competing repricers. If you're ready to experience repricing reimagined, head over to GoAura.com to start your 14-day free trial.
It makes complete sense. This is why I love your books, and it clarifies so many things that may seem as a nuanced thing, or that you might intuitively kind of think in the back of your mind, but you don't have enough clarity to execute on it. And it's funny because I can immediately pull examples. So like I worked at Publix grocery store when I was younger. Customer support, that is their thing, right? We had the best customer support period, or customer service. You're not going to beat it. We would lose money to have that win. As a company, we would lose money.
And Publix becomes world famous for that, right?
Yes.
I mean, the reputation's extraordinary.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if they falter on that, if they say, you know what, let's let that slip, you know, customer support, whatever, let's just get better products, or let's have the cheaper prices. You think you would win. Like if your store is offering groceries that's cheaper than anyone else, you think you'd start winning, but you'd actually start losing. Your reputation is something, and now the whole customer base they can't deliver on it. You know, when you ask your best customers, what are you doing right? They will often tell you your big promise. And then you got to figure out what you're delivering. I had a client, I used to have a technology business. We served hedge funds. I asked my best client, what am I doing right? He said, your response times. He's like, when we have a problem, you guys get on site quickly. I knew my QBR was the dispatch and arrival of my team, like make sure we're prompt. But here's the thing. When your customer tells you what you're doing right, they're actually not telling you what you're doing right. They're telling you what they judge you on. And if, you know, this is the greatest insight. It's a Jedi mind trick. Whatever your customers say you do right, that's the thing they're observing and judging you on. And you better actually improve what you're doing right. And the funny thing is most businesses say, well, we'll have, you know, better technology offerings. We'll do other things. And yeah, we'll continue to try to arrive on time, but we'll do all these things. And then they go, why are we losing customers? Just deliver on what they expect most and all the time. Never miss that. And the other things be in the ballpark, and you'll build a reputation for excellence.
It's funny because as I'm thinking through this with the software company, you know, the expectation that we give is we want to be the best repricing tool for Amazon sellers. And that means having a tool that's easy to use, a tool that's advanced. But what's funny is a lot of our expectations from a user standpoint is customer success and service. It's having somebody respond in a quick manner and being able to resolve things, but not just say, hey, here's the solution. Hey, here's the solution, but I went ahead and did that for you. You're good, you know, saving them time. So it's funny working through this from, you know, an analogy from experience with another company that's vastly larger than our own. But even like right now, when we're in this growth phase, and it's funny because it's so timely that we're talking now, because we're now in the phase of, there's 2 of us in the company and we're growing, and it's systems. And so let's kind of transition over to systems, because this is where like I'm going to geek out very, very hard.
Yeah.
So how do you approach systems? I mean, there's so many different philosophies, different frameworks. How do you approach it?
Yeah. So systems are absolutely necessary. But I think the old school tradition has been to develop SOPs, standard operating procedures. And my belief, and I'm pretty adamant about this now, is SOPs are no longer applicable. There's a new standard. I call them captures. And it's based upon this hypothesis. I believe every business has every system already created. It just resides in the mind of the owner or the employees. So it's not about the creation of systems as much as the extraction of systems and then the improvement of what we extract. So SOPs was about the creation of systems and making these long documents. We just got to capture what's in your mind. Now, the beautiful thing is I found there's only 3 ways to extract or do things in a business. One is computer interface. We're on the computer typing something. Second is verbal command, kind of like we're doing now. We're exchanging thoughts and ideas verbally. And third is through motion, action, moving a package or packaging something up. That's the 3 kind of inputs, if you will. So we simply need to capture it. You can use screen capture software. And next time you do like invoicing on a computer, you can just record the process and say, here's how we do it currently. And you just follow your process, do a voiceover explaining some stuff. And now you've captured a video that you can transfer to an employee and say, there's our best practice. Same thing with, a sales call. You can just record the sales call and say, here's the format for the sales call, or some kind of movement. So step 1 is the extraction of what we have and capture and record it. Step 2 is now you assign it to an employee and say, this is our current system and process, our best practice. Follow this best practice. And if you have any questions or need a decision made around this, it is your responsibility, employee, to figure it out. Because I've hired you for what's on that shoulder of yours, that brain. Your job is to figure it out. But here's the most critical step that actually almost no one does, yet this is the step that proves mastery. They're just saying the best student in every room is the teacher. Therefore, you have that employee that's now doing the invoicing or whatever the task that you transferred over. You have them create another video with the best practice. Even if it's almost parroting what you've said, if they're able to teach the process, that means they've mastered the process. And the beautiful thing is, if that employee leaves, the knowledge no longer leaves. They've created the next standard. So it's this iterative process of creating and capturing videos or audio and having the employee teach themselves that will bring about all the systems in your business. I think our own office here, we have about 400 or 500 videos for all different aspects of a business. And it's this knowledge-based system. Oh, and one little more shortcut is a lot of this stuff's been created and put on YouTube. Like you can Google on YouTube, like how to invoice in QuickBooks, blah, blah, blah. The video's already there and you can just export it and store it in your system. There's a video on how to peel bananas. And I didn't realize this. I was peeling bananas the wrong way, grabbing the stem. There's a faster, easier way.
Do you not grab the stem?
Out there for everything. What was that?
Do you not grab the stem? Because that's been my entire childhood.
Yeah. No, you don't. So
oh, God.
Apes, go back to nature. Apes have figured it out. It's the other side where the tip is, you simply pinch the very tip of the banana and it will split. And it works for a very ripe banana that's greenish or a banana that's a little more mature. You just squeeze it and it pops open and it peels. By grabbing the stem, you can bend it and smush it and mash it. The other side, it opens so easily.
That's insane. I love
It's
that.
insane.
That's so good. I like your point about, it's funny because I'm making other connections. So I'm in my last year as a finance major too, full time. And the thing that's helped me, because we have so much going on, is I'm taking in so much information. And I started to use what's called the Fineman Technique. So Richard Fineman, physicist, and basically he would go into some very difficult departments and say, teach me something that's very difficult to understand. And he had this little kind of process he would go through. And the primary part of it was he had to be able to explain it to a 5-year-old. The point here that kind of ties back to your point is if you can teach it, and if you learn something in order to be able to teach it to somebody, you learn vastly different. So having an employee or whoever is owning that process, that task, say, hey, now you go make the video. That's huge. I think, I want to really kind of highlight that because I don't think enough people will understand how valuable that is from a psychological and cognitive standpoint. It's massive. The way we've kind of been approaching it I'm not sure if this is the right way because we're always trying to, we're in flux with systems, right? Like what's the best tool, what's the best framework for us? And we've kind of boiled it down to two types of systems or processes, SOPs, whatever. We have static. So things that, this is the Wi-Fi password kind of stuff, right? These are our logins. And that lives in one tool. So like right now we're testing Notions and it's pretty good. And then we have dynamic processes. So these are actual like, okay, you need to do that task. We use process tree. So you launch that task. It's an actual checklist. You have to go through it. That's the way we've kind of been approaching it. I'm not sure if it's correct, but it's cool because, we can add videos into that. And a few of those I've actually pulled videos from YouTube for the podcast. And I'm like, hey, let's just grab that. I'm going to paste it right here. I mean, because why recreate the process if it's great already? Unless it needs to be, right? That's pretty cool.
I love it. I love that. There is a theorem, I think it's called Occam's razor, O-C-C-A-M, Occam's razor. And the basic concept, and I may bastardize this a little bit, is the simplest solution is often the best solution. And I think it's human nature to bring complexity to things. One thing you mentioned that I love is the 5-year-old. If a 5-year-old can do it, then we have figured it out. And maybe that's Occam's razor that you're talking about. I had an employee in my last company. We did computer crime investigation, and the process of bag and tag was kind of the generic term, but of evidence procurement and control is more the technical term. It's a very complex process. You got to, make sure a computer is not being modified. You got to take the hard drive out. You got to do a ghosting effectively or imaging of the drive, reinsert it, make sure that the integrity of the signatures and blah, 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 blah. It gets really complex. We called it Patty's rule. Patty was my personal assistant and she had no technical background. And we said this system has to be so simple that Patty can be able to do these drive captures and cloning and the evidence procurement and control. And initially it was this really complex thing and no one knew what the hell was going on. And Patty looked at it and her tears started welling up and said, I can never do this. We knew it wasn't there yet. It took us about 2 or 3 months of iterations and keep on going back to Patty until Patty could just bang this out 1, 2, 3. We brought about the system, the process, and the simplicity. What that opened up for us was stratospheric growth. Now we're able to hire guys right out of college. Fordham here in New York had a great reputation for people in this space, but they were students. They hadn't done this work before. We're plugging them in, and within a week, they were procuring evidence for us and following the exact strict protocols necessary by making it accessible to Patty or the 5-year-old kind of mindset.
I love it. Have you ever heard of Ari Meisel?
Yeah, I know Ari, actually.
Okay, cool. So I love his
personal friends. We've spoken before.
Gotcha. So I love his OAO framework because it starts with optimization, and too many times, at least in our industry, people go the outsource route first, and they don't realize that's actually the third leg, right? That's the third phase, and really you taking the time to ask the question: is this the best way to do X, Y, or Z task?
Right.
And how do we make it so easy that anybody could do it, even if it's only for you? This is a thing, especially for business owners getting started and it's really just them, still optimize things so you don't have to deal with overwhelm without really there's no reason for it, right? So make things better. I remember my first company, I created SOPs for me just because I didn't want to think about it, and I knew I would at some point have a bad day and have human error that would cost me money. So I would literally follow these checklists myself, but I knew when I could hire somebody, I could just hand this off and it's already been optimized, gone through, tested. And now we can just do that again with somebody else. And it's a huge godsend, to be honest.
I believe it. One of the most consistent mistakes I have made in my businesses, and I've not mastered this yet, is reverting to the apparent issues, racing into it, going for the first solution and just go because we don't have time. And then I follow a solution that's ineffective, or it takes way more time than necessary. And I'm actually expending the one resource that's not replenishable, which is time. And forcing that pregnant pause by saying, hey, is this the optimal thing? Which I'm trying to be deliberate about, but I still miss it at times. Giving that pregnant pause can sometimes find a solution that saves you so much time. And if it doesn't, at least you're proving to yourself you find, the first go around, perhaps the optimal solution. So this is something I struggle with, and I think many other entrepreneurs do too. Just rushing to the parent solutions, not necessarily the right one.
Yeah, 100%. We just dealt with something last week that we haven't dealt with it before, and it was a little bit more painful for everybody because we took the time. Luckily, I think we executed pretty well, but we're like, let's not just react to this. Let's ask the question, could this happen again? Okay, what's the best response here? That. And then, okay, let's go ahead and think through the best response, the best system. How can we, because it was an issue where it was actually an issue with Amazon, but that's our user. And so we asked the question, how can we make this easier for our user, even if it's not our problem? And okay, let's write this, process out, test it. Okay, it's good. Okay, now let's create an actual checklist and process tree. So if this ever happens again, we can just launch that thing, go through it. It's not going to be painful. And this issue that took 48 hours can take 2 minutes.
Love it.
I mean, it's great. We're not always on that point, but it's nice when you do, because you're like, man, this, now if this happens again, we don't have to freak out. We're good. We got this under control. And I think it's just iteratively doing this over and over again. So, we're kind of at this point where we're starting to make this transition where we're getting ready to hire our first employee, which is a full stack engineer, which is kind of crazy. What's some advice, and not just for us, obviously, right? But like anybody who's at that point where they're ready to start growing, they're ready to make this transition that we've been talking about. One, like what's some advice, and two, what do you think is the biggest bottleneck that you've kind of seen?
Yeah, so this is a great question, because I've been putting a lot of thought into this in the last year, because this is one of the most common challenges for a growing business is hiring that first or second employee. Because if you think about it, if you're a solopreneur and you hire one employee, that's 100% growth in your business. That's like Google saying today they have 100,000 employees, saying, hey, tomorrow we're bringing on 100,000 more employees. It's equivalent. That's also 100% growth. So we have to put significance in this. So one of the common dilemmas is, since I'm adding another employee, I don't know if I have the funds to pay them, right? Like, do I, as the owner, take a step back in my own compensation? Do we have enough funds to cash flow this person? And so the cash component is a massive thing. So here's a really simple, maybe Occam's razor solution to this. I wrote a book, Profit First. One concept is adding accounts for specific needs. Add an account to your bank called Future Employee. Determine what salary you think you're going to pay this person. An engineer like yours, that might be $100,000 salary. I don't know, 50,000. So $100,000, right? $100,000 salary. That means every month you got to be able to contribute $10,000 roughly, with the overhead and so forth, to this role. So what you do is, for this account you set up, is start paying the salary before you hire the person. So every month you're putting in $10,000 in this account. That will tell you very quickly, can we handle this on cash flow? Do we have enough cash flow to support this employee? And you'll prove to yourself, we don't, or we do. If you do, and we do this for our own business for about 6 months in preparation for this employee. If we don't have enough cash flow, we say, now we don't have enough cash flow. Is there another way of funding this employee? Or maybe we have to bootstrap further without hiring this person. So that gives us direct feedback. Once we've got enough cash flow there, then we can say to ourselves, hey, we're able to pay this before hiring the employee. We'll feel comfortable. Let's make the hire now. But the beautiful thing is, I have 6 months of cash accumulated at the bank account. So when I hire this person, it's not like, tomorrow morning you need to be productive in covering your own revenue and paying for yourself. We say, we have time. Let's do this right. And now we can use that queued up cash to start paying their salary as they ramp appropriately. That's been the greatest solution for us in hiring employees when it comes to that cash flow consideration.
Again, dude, you keep adding clarity to this and simplicity, because when you approach it from that framework, it's a very binary decision, in my opinion, right? Because you've built in the buffer, you've handled risk mitigation already, and it's a very clear decision, like, yes, we can, or no, we can't. And the majority of our listeners are bootstrapped. I mean, we're bootstrapped as a software company. We decided not to raise money. So
I went to a conference and I go this every year. I've been going for 15 years. It's called Gathering of Titans, whatever. It's just a stupid name. But the idea was, at this event, to gather together entrepreneurs who are the next generation of game changers. And these were entrepreneurs of a generation back now. 15 years ago, we started, almost 20. And I'll never forget sitting down next to me on one side was some guy who removed junk for a living. There was another guy who made a lip balm. Like, these are the dumbest businesses. My ego is so rich. I'm like, I'm in the technology space. I'm the winner here. Well, the guy to my right was Brian Scudamore, the founder of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. The guy to my left was Rob French. He's the third partner in Burt's Bees, sold for $1 billion to Clorox. Whatever. But these men and women are surrounding me. There's 100 of us in the room. Year 3 or 4 of this event, we bring in an investment firm. And the guy asked a fascinating question. He says, how many businesses in here started off with investment capital? Not Brian Scudamore, 1-800-GOT-JUNK, did not raise his hand. Burt's Bees did not raise their hands. Every company was bootstrapped. I couldn't believe it. And then he said, how many of you have received Series A or Series B investment funding? I think 5%, 5 people's hands went up, 5% of the group. The vast majority of businesses never get outside capital or very little beyond friends and family. We are almost all bootstrappers. So we should never go into this mentality of, oh, at a certain point, I'm going to get outside capital and a big investor is going to save my business or make me grow explosively. It's going to be off your own bootstraps. And we should be very proud of that because that's how successful businesses, the majority of them, actually come about.
Yeah. And when I really analyze companies that have lasted for a long period of time, that are not like these unicorn startups and stuff like that, they're bootstrapped. And if they did raise money, it's like years down the road. And they had a very strategic use for that. Maybe that's acquiring a competitor or whatever. And so when we made that decision, I was like, no, it's good because it's easier for us to make a decision of when we can do certain things. Like we know it's going to cost us X per year. Great. We need to grow the business X in revenue to make that happen.
And if you spend your own money, you feel the bite, you know?
Yeah.
When you have OPM, other people's money is very easy to spend. I did an angel round for one business, and in retrospect, it was one of the biggest mistakes I've made because I blew that money. It was a small round. I got $100,000 from an angel and said, oh, now we can get that nice office suite we need to impress our clients. You know, and I blew I needed the high-end technology, and it was such a waste, but I was easily justifying it. The second we depleted that money and now it's coming out of my own pocket, it's like, oh, I don't need the nice office space anymore.
Yeah, right.
You know, my basement seems adequate. And it was.
Yeah, and this is something you kind of talk about in the book Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, right?
Yeah. So the concept of toilet paper entrepreneur is actually the lack of resources I found build the healthiest businesses. The lacks of funds, you know, we just talked about. But the lack of experience, actually, I found businesses challenge industry notions and standards. It's the guy that comes out of left field and destroys the industry because he had no idea how the industry operated. You know, taxis were destroyed by Uber because the Uber guys had never run a taxi business. They had a problem. They said, here's our solution to it. And they destroyed all the standards and norms. So toilet paper entrepreneur is all about the standard beliefs of what makes a successful business is actually, I believe, totally wrong. It's the person that's underfunded, underexperienced that can win over industry left and right.
I love it. Mike, man, I'm going to be respectful of your time. We could talk for hours on this because I've just poured over your books. And
just a joy being with you. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thanks for spending some time with us. And honestly, like the amount of value we just went over in, I would say, a relatively short period of time is like if you don't have pages upon pages of notes, and obviously like get the books because like that's like holy crap. It's you know, your series are books that you should read at least once a year because you reread these and it puts things into perspective. It helps add clarity, like I've been saying this entire time, to what you're doing and why and how. Especially for like a first time business owner where you're just like shooting darts at a wall. You're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Get that clarity. And I mean, regardless of where you're at in that business cycle, like Mike, you've got a book for that. You know what I mean? It's great.
Thank you. And that's my intention. You know, I'm writing a compendium. Ultimately, my goal is of 25 books. I have them all outlined, everything. I'm only on book 6 now. My next book, it's called Fix This Next. It comes out in 2020. And my hope is to figure out these simple solutions for all the different elements of business, from HR, which I haven't written yet, to sales, pumpkin plant kinds on that, and all these different elements of a business. That's my hope, and that's my life's purpose is to serve us entrepreneurs and make it simple.
That's fantastic. Well, you're doing a hell of a job, so I'm going to pre-order everything now.
Thanks,
Mike. Where can people, if they're not already kind of plugged into, you know, Profit First, Pumpkin Plan, Clockwork, your whole little ecosystem you got going on, where's the best place that people can kind of jump into that?
Best place is my website, hands down. It's MikeMichalowicz.com. Here's the deal, Dylan. Like, no one can spell Michalowicz. Google struggles. If you type in Mike Mick, M-I-C, it'll be the long Polish name. But here's a better way. My nickname in high school was Mike Motorbike. Never driven a motorcycle. Go to MikeMotorbike.com. That's easy to remember. That'll forward you to my site. And all my books are up there. Free chapter downloads. I'm a podcaster. I used to write for the Wall Street Journal. All that stuff is up there for free.
Awesome. Mike, that's perfect, man. Seriously, thank you so much again.
Thanks, Dylan. I'll see you.
Before we leave, I have a huge ask. If you enjoyed this podcast and you got value from it, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. The way we're able to have more impact on more sellers is by getting in front of them. We can do that by having more reviews and getting pushed to the top of iTunes podcasts. So leave us a review and let us know what you think of the podcast.